Now, it's been called the bedroom tax. From April, thousands of people living in social housing could find themselves having to pay extra rent if they have a spare room.
Yes, it's thought the change will affect more than 500,000 people and could see tenants paying an average of £14 a week more. Yesterday, the Prime Minister was asked if parents with a son or daughter, for example, in the armed forces, would be among those facing higher charges.
Is it right that a mother in my constituency may not, because of his government's bedroom tax and confirmed by his minister, be able to offer her son serving in Her Majesty's Armed Forces either a home or a bedroom on his return from duty?
Yeah. The reforms to housing benefit that we're putting in place, and I very happily look at the case that the Honourable Lady says, but the reforms we're putting in place have a very clear principle at their heart. There are many people in private rented accommodation who don't have housing benefit, who cannot afford extra bedrooms, and we have to get control of housing benefit. We are now spending as a country £23 billion on housing benefit, and we have to get that budget under control.
Well, Paul Lewis has been looking at this story for us this morning. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? David Cameron, he's got that personal pledge. I'm going to look at that individual case. There's going to be a lot of individual cases which make this seem very unfair.
There are, and I don't think he'll make any change in that case because, as far as I can see, the rules will be followed. If you have a grown-up child living with you and they're working and they're living with you, then your housing benefit is reduced by a lot, £60, £70 a week. If they leave and go off on active service like a soldier might to Afghanistan, after 13 weeks you would be subject to this room being counted as a spare room and you would have this deduction from your benefit. But that would actually be less than the deduction for when they're living there. I think perhaps harder cases are where, you know, parents want to keep a spare room so that people can visit, you know, so that the children can come back, grandchildren can come back. But the rule will be from the 1st of April that if you're in social housing, that's council housing or housing association housing, then if you have a room more than they deem you need, you will have a cut in your housing benefit, averaging £14 a week.
And let's just remind people of the rules. When is a spare room a spare room?
Well, a spare room is more than you need. Now, you need one bedroom for an adult or a couple, and that, some disabled people have been saying to me, is quite hard. If you're disabled, maybe a couple want to sleep in separate rooms for all sorts of reasons. You get one room for a child 16 years or over, but children have to share a room up to the age of 9 if they're the same sex and up to the age of 15 if they're opposite sexes. I must say the biggest question I've probably had is...
Which you've had a lot.
I've been absolutely overwhelmed. Does it apply to pensioners? And the answer is no. Once you've reached women's state pension age, which is about 61 and a half on the 1st of April, then this will no longer apply. And if you're close to that age, as Marie, who emailed me, she has a 3-bedroom house and will be affected, she says, she reaches pension age on the 6th of November. It won't affect her, it will affect her on the 1st of April, but not when she reaches pension age, and there's a kind of fund that may help her over that gap.
So what happens, Paul? So you're living in a house and you're deemed to have a spare bedroom. You go back to your housing association or the council and you say, I'm going to get discharged.
Well, yeah.
Give me a house with the right number of rooms. They say no. Whose responsibility is that?
Well, that's just tough, I'm afraid, and this is one other big point that's been made. You know, Joe says, where are the smaller homes? And you may say, OK, I'm quite happy to live in a smaller home, find me one. If they can't, that is your problem. You have to pay for the spare room, even if there's no available property with a smaller room. And many people have also been making the point to me, you know, moving is an expensive business if you're on benefit, and they may not be able to afford to move. So there are very, very few exemptions. The pensioners are one. And, you know, strange things like even foster parents don't have a room counted for their foster child, even when the child is there, which I find quite extraordinary. You do get a room counted if you have an overnight carer every night. But otherwise, if you just need an overnight carer occasionally, you can't keep a room spare for them. So there's going to be some very hard cases, I think, raised with MPs and indeed the Prime Minister himself.
And also changes as well to council tax benefit, which will affect lots of people too.
Yes, I mean, council tax benefit is being scrapped, but it's being replaced from the 1st of April by local schemes. Now, these are different throughout Great Britain, different in Wales, different in Scotland, and in England, every local council will be making its own decision. The problem is, as well as making them pay for council tax benefit, the budget's being cut by 10%. Again, people over pension age are exempt from these cuts, so the whole burden falls on working age families, and that will mean in many areas, most areas according to the research we've got the results so far, will face they'll have to pay 20% of their council tax. At the moment, as the report earlier said, many people get it all paid. They'll have to pay 20% of it, a fifth of it. That could be £200 a year or thereabouts, a bit more in some cases. So, and that will often be the same people who are also losing housing benefits. So it's going to be, you know, we've talked about the cuts on this programme many times. They really are beginning now for many low-income families. And, you know, whatever you think about them in theory, these are hard personal cases. And on the bedroom tax, I should just say, that will save £500 million a year. That's about 2% of the housing benefit bill, and as David Cameron made clear, that is one of its purposes.
Paul, thank you very much. And people can still talk to you on
They
on
can
Twitter
tweet me, and I'll try and write more and put links up later in the day.
Good. Thanks, Paul. Now, 60